Few bands have influenced the landscape of industrial rock and modern alternative music as profoundly as Nine Inch Nails. The mastermind behind all of this is of course Trent Reznor, a multi-instrumentalist who also programs his own drums. In this episode, we'll analyze 3 songs that to me contain the essence of what makes a great Nine Inch Nails drum track. We have an easy one to learn the basics, a classic with a special surprise that frankly sounds a bit unbelievable, and an insane one that made me regret including it in this video. Let's get started. Hello everyone, this is... Over the years we've witnessed many incarnations of Trent Reznor. For example, there's Existential Dread Trent, Waterworld Extra Trent, Aristocratic Vampire Trent, and of course the later stage Buff Trent. But they all have one thing in common. Trent always maintained control of his artistic vision. It's my record and I'm going to make it sound shitty if I want to. Hey, that's us every time we make an end jam. Very much like Prince, who could also play practically every instrument himself, Trent often relied on drum machines. He once said, "My idea of a drum is a button on a drum machine." This approach is of course right up our alley. We start off with Only from the 4th studio album With Teeth. To me this always seemed like a pivotal moment in Nine Inch Nails history. Trent got sober, and it was on this album that he first worked together with Atticus Ross, who later became the only other official band member of Nine Inch Nails. The music video was directed by none other than David Fincher, who 5 years later made The Social Network, where Ross and Reznor worked together as a film composer duo for the first time. 112 BPM. We just need 4 sounds. Kick, snare, closed and open hat. This is a dead simple 4 on the floor beat. Closed hats into the offbeat. The last one's an open hat. The pattern actually consists of 2 bars, which are nearly identical. The only differences are an additional snare hit right here, and the last kick is pushed back by an 8th note. There's been a lot of speculation on which drum machine was used, the 2 main suspects being the sequential drum tracks and the EMU SP12 stock samples. Neither of those sounded like a match to me, but that's not really important because this pattern will work as long as you pick sounds that are short, dry, and snappy. We used the vintage Dead kit in Addictive drums too. Basically just stay away from anything that screams 80s or Phil Collins and go for a more dry, understated funk sound. So, takeaway number 1 for Nine Inch Nails style drums. Keep most sounds dry and snappy. One interesting thing about the intro is that the open hat here in bar 1 doesn't ring out. It's cut short when the second bar begins, which of course might be a side effect of copy-pasting, but you can also place a very faint closed hat at the start of bar 2 that chokes the open hat. I could have sworn this happens more often throughout the song, but you actually only hear it once in the intro. Super effective, it sets the tone for the rest of the track. I also noticed that about 1 minute into the song, the first bar is played twice, which causes a rhythmic shift. It makes that double hit on the snare move from the even to the odd bars. I'm not sure if that was a deliberate move to mess with our sense of timing or just a copy-paste mistake. The plot thickens. Interesting either way. Let's make a variation of this pattern. Here comes one of the oldest tricks in the book. All closed hats become open hats. Simple, but incredibly effective to raise tension. A minimalistic drum pattern like this calls for a minimalistic drum fill. Clear the last half of the second bar and fill it up with snares. Done. Trent Reznor is a true multi-instrumentalist, playing everything from piano to saxophone. But there is one instrument he has a very special relationship with, one that he clearly likes more than the others. And that's the tambourine. If you think I'm kidding, there are multiple supercuts of Trent going to town on that tambourine. Look at him, doing what he loves, jingling away like a medieval jester. If you want to program a tambourine, then try using multiple velocities to make it sound more dynamic. For example, a high velocity when you would beat the tambourine against your hand, and alternating low velocities for when you just jingle it back and forth. And what's more hardcore than playing tambourine? Tambourine with distortion. Seriously, try it. A little bit can make it sound fuller in the mix. Closer is the most popular Nine Inch Nails track and could be considered the centerpiece of their '94 landmark album The Downward Spiral. In 2007 I was lucky enough to see them live, and when they played this song, it truly felt like a portal from hell opened up on stage, in a good way. But how do the drum patterns and sounds contribute to that feeling? Thanks to an interview in the March '94 issue of Keyboard magazine, we already have a few pointers from Trent himself. The kick drum was sampled from Iggy Pop's Night Clubbing, produced by none other than David Bowie, by the way. But are we really going to take a kick drum from a man who famously doesn't even have a last shirt to give? I think we're obliged to build one ourselves. We're going for a dull overall sound, but with a pronounced attack click at the beginning. Keep the decay snappy. Add some overdrive. And a resonant high-pass filter for more bottom end. But here's where things get interesting. The closer kick features two extras. The first one is a delay, so let's turn that up. But to get the effect we want, the delay time needs to be much shorter. Set it to a 30-second note at 90 ppm, or about 83 milliseconds. We want less repeats though, so I'll reduce the feedback. This gives us a bouncy, almost alien-like quality on the kick. The second extra is a kind of breathing effect, a faint diffuse echo. You could use a second delay for that, but the Syntakt only has one, so we need to get creative. Luckily, the reverb has a pre-delay setting, so we can use that to fake one diffuse delay repeat. With enough pre-delay, you can hear a clear separation between the kick and its reverb. The reverb tail doesn't need to be that long though. Turn the decay down to tighten things up. That already causes a pretty weird feeling, as if your ears are being pressurized. Maybe a bit less brightness on the reverb. And once you put your steps on the sequencer, you can fine-tune the timing of this breathing effect by simply adjusting the pre-delay. So, revising takeaway number 1. Keep most sounds dry and snappy, and maybe put a prominent weird effect on one of them. In this case, the creepy snarling delay and breathing. Let's turn that into a sample and switch over to our pad sequencer for a better overview. By the way, if you want to use this bouncy alien kick, then you can download it for free during the next 7 days on our Patreon, along with some other samples we made for this episode. You'll find lots of other stuff on there as well, like 150 plus high-quality drum pattern transcriptions, cheat sheets for various drum machines and synthesizers, and the Drum Machine 101 book we're currently writing. And you might wonder where this lovely 100% authentic snare is coming from. Well, in the Keyboard Magazine interview, Trent also mentions that he used the Roland R-70 on the album, a sample-based drum machine from 1992. And here's where things get a little weird. You know us, we generally try not to obsess over original gear and use whatever we have available, which we did. I had already recreated the entire drum track on the Syntakt, but then the intern visited a small local flea market for musicians, and they had one single drum machine. And it was a Roland R-70. And it was in perfect working condition. And she got it for a very good price. And we still can't believe this actually happened. Isn't this the most beautiful 90s office telephone you've ever seen? And somewhere among the 242 instruments, there it is, the closer snare. Having a real R-70 in our studio was so helpful because most sample packs are either low quality, have the onboard effects baked in, which honestly are not that great, or simply are incomplete. So we took the time to make a high-quality sample pack with all of its sounds, which we've already shared with our patrons. The snare doesn't even need much processing. We just added a low cut to keep it out of the kick's territory and a small bump for the high frequencies. While I didn't find the closer closed head among the R-70 sounds, I'll show you how I built one myself. Start with a dry acoustic closed head like this one from the Lindrum. We're aiming for something short and clicky that sounds almost like a ticking clock or a lawn sprinkler. But if we shorten the sample at the end, it sounds scratchy. Listen what happens when I trim it from the start instead. Find a position you like and adjust the pitch and gain to taste. Rapid fire 16ths, pan to the left. And the Roland R-70 keeps on giving. Of course, Roland included all kinds of samples from their legacy drum machines. This 808 open hat goes on the offbeats, panned slightly to the right. Now onto the chorus. This is the part where Trent tells us, how can I put this so it doesn't get censored? I want to hug you like an animal. During that part, something very interesting happens. The pattern stays the same, but the sound changes completely. There's a switch from those shorter close proximity sounds to more naturally decaying drums within a larger space. Still pretty hard-hitting though. I've no idea whether Trent also used the R-70 for this segment, but to keep it simple, we will. I'll mute the closed hats, those aren't part of the chorus. And that's takeaway number 2. Use multiple sound sets to create different moods or spaces for the verse and chorus. There's a bit of processing on these sounds though. Here's what they sound like with and without. We basically beefed up the kick with a transient shaper and EQ and gave it some reverb. The snare needs to be processed so it doesn't get in the way of the kick, for instance using EQ or sidechain ducking. The hi-hat got a low cut and some saturation. Which leads us to takeaway number 3. Make the samples hit harder. Popular choices include transient shaper, expander, layering, pitching the sample down, distortion, and overdrive. Aim for this mysterious air of uncertainty about whether a drum is being hit, or you're having a tantrum and stuff is being thrown into the studio corner. Ideally both at the same time. Okay, the chorus is done and we're back to the previous sound set. The next element is a very basic deep kick sound, mostly a pure sine wave with some overdrive and a clearly defined click at the beginning. We need 2 of those, a higher and a lower one. A simple phrase like this brings a lot more low-end movement into the beat. Check out how nicely these deep drums interact with the kick of the main pattern. Add more steps for an even busier version. So, here's where things get crazy. Trent Reznor likes to do this thing where he makes a wild flowing collage out of all kinds of drum sounds. This is what we're working with. Okay, by now it should be obvious, but here's takeaway number 4. Use sounds from 80s or 90s sample-based drum machines. If these sounds are good enough for Trent, they're good enough for us. Also, listen what a difference it made that we trimmed some of these samples down. Then we just put this collage over the regular drum beat. That's for the grand finale. And I have to be honest, without the original drum stems, I wouldn't have been able to figure this one out, because this gets absolutely buried in noise, distortion, and chaos. A bit like Bob Ross when he paints a beautiful landscape and then covers everything up with a big tree. All the Love in the World was the opener on With Teeth, though it would also have been an awesome closer. Haha, closer, get it? To be honest, I was a little salty that they didn't play it on the 2007 tour. Interestingly, Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters is credited as playing percussion on this track. I'm pretty sure Trent wouldn't let anyone else touch the tambourine, so my takeaway from this is that Dave played the shaker. The album liner notes also say additional programming by Rupert Parks, aka Photech. Uh-oh. Yes, deal with it, With Teeth is my favorite Nine Inch Nails album. And you know, when I started the drum transcription for All the Love in the World, I just looked forward to picking apart one of my favorite songs. Little did I know. As I was chewing my way through, it quickly became clear that every single bar in the first 3 minutes is different. There is no repeating pattern. Every part of the drums is unique. It's just 96 bars of wall-to-wall one-time events. I mean, me, right?
Like an animal.
No, Trent. Good initiative, but no. So, here's the plan. I'm obviously not going to program all of the patterns, but I'm going to give you a tour of the foundation and all of the interesting bits. After that, you can use those tricks to build your own variations, or just look at the sequencer during the end jam to see what's going on there. 120 BPM. Each pattern is 2 bars long, 32 steps. For the first part, we only need 4 sounds. These are also in our sample pack. I made the kick and snare with the Syntakt, and the hats are from the TR-707. I like the 707 hats because they hit hard, but they're not as easily recognizable as their 909 counterparts. Now for some quick minimal sound shaping. Add some bit crushing or bitrate reduction. and cut off the low frequencies for now. That'll leave us some oomph for later. The hi-hats need to be really snappy, so turn down the decay or shorten them with a volume envelope. Like I said, every bar is different, but this one's a good starting point. From here you can add and remove steps or shift them around. During the chorus we have a slightly different pattern. The hi-hats shift away from their steady pulse and things get more agitated. Sounds more like a breakbeat overall. That was the easy part, but one main ingredient is missing: a delay effect. Listen what happens when I put a quarter note delay on everything. Those delay repeats instantly give more complexity to the pattern. They fill the gaps and make it sound more dynamic. Hits like this snare that are a 16th ahead of the beat will mix everything up and cause a nice interplay with whatever's happening after. Unfortunately, this is an oversimplification of what's actually happening. Some drum hits don't have a delay, so you would need to turn the delay send on or off per instrument, and occasionally the delay times and repeats vary. Sounds like a job for a modular rig, to be honest, but not at my age and not in this economy. The only question to ask yourself is, would Trent be disappointed if you just wing it and put one simple delay on everything?
No, it doesn't really matter.
And sometimes there are even delay repeats at the beginning of a bar, seemingly coming out of nowhere, which is a strong indicator that the drums were spliced together from parts of a longer jam session, which Trent is known to do. Now, if you still wanted to exactly replicate those aspects of the pattern, you could program every single delay repeat as a separate drum hit. But you'd have to be pretty mad to do this for all instruments across 96 bars. The variations do not solely consist of turning steps on or off though. There are lots of little special events sprinkled on top. Together they create a dynamic ebb and flow movement. These waves of low and high activity keep it interesting. For most of these events it's ideal to have a machine with effects and automation or parameter locking. But you can also do this in a DAW via automation curves or by just twiddling knobs live by hand. Let's see what's on the menu. Drum hits pan to the side. Stereo widening. Here we're using a chorus. Trimming sounds down to glitchy fragments. Swing. This happens exactly one time, so maybe someone accidentally touched the swing dial during the jam. A claustrophobically short delay. You could also double the part in post. Reverse drum hits. Pitch changes. Could be caused by ring modulation though. Trent loves to use that. And my favorite, controlled destruction. As we're heading for the last part, we basically just turn up the overdrive, distortion, bit crusher, and whatever else we have at our disposal. The plan is to escalate and fuck up the entire pattern.
Like an animal.
Exactly. And finally, sweet release, after 96 bars, here comes the home stretch with an idiotically simple but incredibly energetic 4-on-the-floor kick part, and some successive layering of extras. Child's play compared to what we already went through. Take the kick from the first part and give it more oomph. In this case, no low cut, more gain, some reverb, and a high frequency boost so it really cuts through. It's a great combo with the uplifting piano. Speaking of which, don't forget to sidechain the piano to this. That's going to give the finale that extra bit of energy. The glue for many dance tracks comes in the form of additional percussion. In this case, a shaker. which adds even more forward momentum. If you wanted to program this, then just alternate high and low velocities. Then a simple tom phrase every 2 bars for some low-end movement. Remember we did the same thing in closer? Works every time. Here it also supports the short percussive notes of the piano. A hi-hat in the offbeats. Pretty standard stuff. And as if all that wasn't enough, we later double up on the kick and layer an even fatter one on top. Because nothing makes people happier than the sudden realization that we didn't yet use all of our low-end reserves. And of course, well, you won't be able to miss it. And as always, a big shout out to all of our patrons. Thanks to your support, we can keep making these videos.